My friends, listen to me carefully today. The most dangerous prison in the world is not made of iron bars or concrete walls. It is not guarded by soldiers or locked with chains. The most dangerous prison on earth is the one in your mind. You can be free in your body but bound in your thinking. You can walk through open fields yet still live behind invisible walls. Some people have never seen a physical jail cell, but their thoughts are their warden. Their beliefs are their bars. Their habits are their handcuffs. The tragedy of life is not death. The tragedy of life is to live imprisoned by lies you never questioned. So many people die having never left the cell they built with their own thoughts. That's why today I'm not here to give you information. I'm here to give you liberation. Because freedom does not begin when your circumstances change. Freedom begins when your mind changes. You see, the mind is the battlefield of destiny. The enemy of your future is not the person who hates you, it's the thought that limits you. The greatest war you will ever fight is not in the streets, it's in your head. Because whatever controls your mind controls your life. There are people in this room right now who are free citizens but imprisoned thinkers. They get up every morning and report for duty to a mental prison. They clock into fear, they clock out of faith. They wake up and immediately put on their shackles. Shackles of doubt, shackles of comparison, shackles of I'm not enough. You may not realize it, but most people are living as inmates of an invisible institution called limitation. They live within the boundaries of what someone else told them was possible. They live inside walls that culture, family, or failure constructed. And the worst part, they've learned to decorate their cells, make them comfortable so they never think of leaving. But hear me today. You cannot fulfill a divine destiny with a defeated mind. You cannot step into a promised future while chained to a painful past. You cannot walk in new purpose using old patterns of thought. Every destiny has an enemy, and that enemy is the mental limitation that tells you to stay where you are. Some of you are wondering why your life feels stuck. It's because your thoughts haven't moved. You're waiting for circumstances to open doors, but God is waiting for you to open your mind. When the mind changes, everything follows. When the mind is renewed, the life is renewed. When the mind expands, possibilities multiply. So today, I came to tell you, the prison is not real, only the belief is. You have accepted boundaries that do not exist. You have called fear wisdom and comfort peace and captivity normal. But I declare to you today that the door of that mental prison is unlocked. You can walk out anytime you choose. All it takes is a decision to think differently, a decision to challenge what you've always believed, a decision to say, no more renting opinions, I will own my thoughts. The mind is the greatest gift God ever gave to humanity. Your mind is so powerful, it can design your destiny or destroy it. It can imagine freedom or fabricate failure. It can create heaven or live in hell without moving an inch. And so I say to you, freedom is not a place. Freedom is a mindset. Until your mind is free, your future will never be. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I visited a wildlife center and saw a magnificent eagle in a cage. That bird was born to soar above mountains, but after months in confinement, something strange happened. When they finally opened the cage and gave it space to fly, the eagle refused. It hopped a few feet, flapped its wings once, and stopped because its mind remembered the walls that no longer existed. That eagle is a picture of millions of people today, gifted, brilliant, created to soar, yet living within the height of their old limitations. They could rise, but they don't believe they can. They could change, but they've accepted the cage. My question to you today is simple. Have you accepted your cage? Because if you have, it's time to break it. This message is for the thinkers who are tired of average. For the dreamers who sense there's more but don't know why, they feel stuck. For the leaders who are ready to build a mind so strong it scares mediocrity. By the end of this message, you will not just think differently, you will see differently. Because when your vision changes, your direction changes. When your direction changes, your destiny follows. So today we begin a journey from limitation to liberation. A journey from mental captivity to mental mastery. And it begins with one realization: the invisible prison exists only in your mind. Now let's walk together into understanding how it was built and how to break it. The mind, my friend, is the greatest battlefield ever created. It is not a place you can see with your eyes, yet every victory and every defeat in life begins there. The wars of nations are temporary, but the wars of the mind are eternal. Because until you win here, points to head, you will lose everywhere else. The Bible never said, be transformed by changing your clothes. It never said, be transformed by moving to a new city. It said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Why? Because your life can never go where your thoughts have not gone first. Every action you take is the offspring of a thought you accepted. Every decision is born from a belief. Every habit is the echo of a mental pattern. You don't behave your way into belief, you believe your way into behavior. So when you change your thoughts, your actions will have no choice but to follow. That's why the enemy of your purpose doesn't need to take your money, your friends, or your opportunities. He just needs your mind. Because if he can control your mind, he already owns your future. Your mind is the control tower of your destiny. It decides where the aircraft of your life will land. It decides whether you fly or whether you fall. But here's the tragedy. Most people have given away the pilot seat. They let other people think for them. They outsource their imagination. They subcontract their convictions. They allow social media to program their perspective. They are what I call mental tenants. They are renting thoughts instead of owning them. You see, when you rent a house, you don't change the foundation. You just live within someone else's structure. And that's what happens when you borrow beliefs. You live within the limits of someone else's mind. But hear me today. You were not created to be a mental tenant. You were designed to be a mental architect. You were designed to construct thought patterns that align with your purpose. Your Creator gave you the blueprint, the principles of truth, the power of vision, the authority of belief, and said, build. So many people pray for miracles while ignoring the machinery of their own mind. They want God to change their situation, but God is waiting for them to change their thinking. Because the moment your thoughts shift, your reality must follow. And let me put it this way. The mind is not just a mirror, it's a manufacturer. It doesn't just reflect your world, it creates it. If you fill it with fear, it will manufacture excuses. If you fill it with faith, it will manufacture opportunities. If you fill it with anger, it will produce resentment. If you fill it with wisdom, it will produce direction. Whatever seed you plant in the soil of your mind will eventually show up in the harvest of your life. That's why your external world is a photocopy of your internal world. The world you live in is simply the world that lived in you first. So if your circumstances are chaotic, it means your thinking is confused. If your relationships are broken, it means your perception of people is distorted. If your life feels stagnant, it means your imagination has stopped expanding. You cannot escape a battlefield you do not recognize. And the greatest deception of all is to fight external enemies while being defeated internally. We spend years learning how to make a living, but almost no time learning how to manage our minds. Listen to me. Education is not transformation. You can have degrees and still live in defeat. You can quote scriptures and still be enslaved by fear. You can pray loudly but still think small. Transformation begins when revelation rewires your thoughts. When truth begins to replace tradition. When conviction replaces confusion. When purpose replaces passivity. That's why every great leader, every visionary, every revolutionary, from Moses to Mandela, from Jesus to innovators of today, won their first battle in the mind. Before they built nations, they built thoughts. Before they changed the world, they changed their internal world. You will never conquer your external environment until you conquer your internal environment. Because destiny doesn't begin with what you do, it begins with what you decide. So before we talk about breaking cages, before we talk about freedom or transformation, you must first understand this law. Your life is always moving in the direction of your most dominant thought. If you think you are defeated, life will agree with you. If you think you are chosen, heaven will confirm it. If you think you are trapped, your decisions will behave like walls. But if you think like a free person, every step you take will create space where there was none. Freedom does not begin with force, it begins with focus. That's why the Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. You don't live according to your potential, you live according to your perception of it. So the battle for your destiny is not fought with weapons, it's fought with wisdom. The war is not over territory, it's over thought territory. Who owns your mind today? Is it your past, your pain, your parents, your peers, or is it the principles of truth that come from God himself? Because whoever holds your mind holds your map. If you let fear hold your mind, fear will chart your course. If you let faith hold your mind, faith will chart your future. So hear me again. Whatever controls your mind controls your movement. And if you want to move into greatness, you must repossess your mind. From this moment forward, I want you to stop renting space to negativity. Stop leasing your imagination to fear. Stop giving free access to doubt. You are the landlord of your own thoughts. Start evicting the tenants that don't pay rent in purpose. When you do that, your life will begin to change, not by accident, but by alignment. Because the mind is the key that unlocks every destiny, the engine that powers every dream, and the soil that sustains every seed of purpose. So now that you understand the battlefield, it's time to identify the weapons that hold you captive, those invisible cages that keep you from becoming who you were created to be. Hear me, my friend. One of the most subtle prisons on earth is the cage you were born into. You did not build it, you simply grew up inside it. It is called inherited thinking. The beliefs you never questioned, the limitations you never tested, the ideas you accepted before you ever examined them. You see, from the day you entered this world, you were surrounded by voices. Some of them meant well. Parents, teachers, neighbors, culture, religion, they all whispered into your mind what they thought was true. And without realizing it, you began to live by borrowed convictions. They told you, people like us don't succeed. They told you, stay in your lane. They told you, dreams are for the rich, not for people from around here. And because you trusted the messenger, you never questioned the message. But hear this truth. Good intentions can still build bad cages. Love can protect you and still limit you. A person can want the best for you and still hand you beliefs that keep you small. The danger of inherited thinking is that it feels comfortable. It feels right because it is familiar. You have lived with those thoughts so long that they sound like your own voice. But familiarity is not truth. A lie you repeat long enough becomes a lifestyle. Let me tell you something. Every family, every culture, every nation passes down not only genetics, but mental templates, ways of seeing the world. Some inherit wealth, others inherit worry. Some inherit discipline, others inherit defeat. You may not control what you receive, but you do control what you retain. There's a young woman I once met, brilliant, artistic, gifted beyond measure. Her paintings moved people to tears. But she refused to call herself an artist because her family had convinced her that art wasn't a real career. So she buried her gift beneath someone else's fear. One day, I asked her a question that I will now ask you. Who told you that? And what qualified them to decide your future? That question broke her cage open. Within a few years, her paintings hung in galleries around the world. Her talent didn't suddenly improve, her belief did. She stopped inheriting limitations and started owning possibility. Beloved, the first step to freedom is recognition. You cannot escape a cage you refuse to see. What beliefs are you carrying that were never yours to begin with? Who defined your ceiling? Who measured your worth? Ask yourself, what did I learn growing up that keeps me small today? And then ask again, is it true or is it tradition? Tradition is not evil. But when tradition replaces truth, it becomes a trap. Principle is eternal. Culture is temporary. If you live by principle, you will lead culture. If you live by culture, you will be limited by it. Inherited thinking hands you patterns of poverty, fear, or timidity. It teaches you to fit in when you were designed to stand out. But hear me, you are not a continuation of your family's limitations. You are the interruption of them. You are the one sent to end the cycle. Every time you challenge an old belief, you are writing a new chapter for those who come after you. That's why the battle for your mind is not just about you, it's about your bloodline. If you stay in the cage, your children will learn its walls. But if you break out, they will inherit your freedom instead of your fear. So today, I want you to make a decision. No more living by default. No more accepting inherited limitations as true. From this day forward, question everything that contradicts your purpose. Because the only belief worthy of you is the belief that agrees with your destiny. Write this principle down in your heart. If the source is limited, the belief will be too. When you understand that, you will stop letting people who have never flown tell you how high you can soar. The first cage is broken when you stop inheriting beliefs and start investigating truth. And now that you have seen how thinking can be inherited, let us move to a deeper prison, the one built not by others' words, but by your own wounds. Now listen to me carefully. The second cage is more dangerous than the first. Because the first was given to you, but this one you built yourself. It is called trauma thinking, the beliefs you learned from pain that were never meant to stay with you. Pain is a teacher, but it was never meant to be your master. Pain has a purpose, but it was never designed to become your philosophy. Every human being experiences pain, but not every human being allows pain to rewrite their truth. The problem is that most people do not process pain. They personalize it. They take the event and turn it into identity. They say, I failed, so I am a failure. I was betrayed, so I can't trust again. I was abandoned, so I must not be worth keeping. And when those sentences become beliefs, the bars of the second cage begin to rise. Let me teach you something about your mind. The mind is a recorder. It captures everything. But if you don't rewrite the story, it will play the same scene over and over until it becomes your reality. You can't have a new life while replaying old pain. Your past will always knock on the door of your present until you stop answering. There's a difference between remembering pain and reliving it. When you remember pain, you learn. When you relive pain, you remain. And some of you have been remaining where you should have been learning. I once met a man who went bankrupt early in his career. He had big dreams, powerful ideas, but one financial failure branded his soul. He made a vow in his heart that day, I will never take risks again. So for 10 years, he lived in fear of expansion. He avoided opportunities. He refused growth. He rejected partnerships. He wasn't protecting his future. He was protecting his pain. His breakthrough didn't come from money or mentorship. It came from revelation. He realized that his past failure was not a sentence. It was a seminar. The lesson wasn't never risk again. The lesson was risk wisely next time. When he changed the meaning of his pain, the power of that pain disappeared. Let me say that again for someone listening. Your pain does not define you. The meaning you give it does. If you interpret pain as punishment, it will make you bitter. If you interpret pain as instruction, it will make you better. Pain will visit you, but you must decide if it becomes a teacher or a tenant. If you let it live too long, it starts paying rent in your thoughts, and soon it owns the house. I know many people who stopped living the day they got hurt. Their bodies kept moving, but their hearts froze in time. Their pain became their personality. You talk to them, and you're not hearing their voice anymore. You're hearing their wounds speak. But God never designed you to be a spokesperson for your scars. He designed you to be a steward of your healing. The scar is supposed to be a testimony, not a trademark. It should remind you of what you came through, not what you came to. The danger of trauma thinking is that it teaches you lessons you were never meant to learn. It teaches you that vulnerability equals weakness, that hope equals disappointment, that effort equals exhaustion. Those are not truths. They are survival codes written by fear. And if you don't rewrite them, you will keep surviving when you were born to thrive. Let me give you a principle. Pain misinterpreted becomes prophecy. What does that mean? It means if you don't change the message of your pain will start predicting your future. You begin to see every new opportunity through the eyes of old wounds. You'll meet new people, but treat them like the ones who hurt you. You'll face new seasons, but act like you're still in the last storm. So how do you break this cage? You must confront your pain and change its purpose. Don't ask, why did this happen to me? Ask, what did this come to teach me? Don't ask, what did I lose? Ask, what did I learn? When you assign purpose to pain, you disarm its power. When you let God reinterpret your wounds, your scars become wisdom. Your past ceases to be a prison and becomes a platform. The mind healed by truth can look back at trauma and say, thank you, you made me stronger, not smaller. When you reach that point, you'll know the cage is cracked. So today I challenge you, revisit every painful season and rewrite the lesson. Don't carry conclusions that pain forced on you. Don't let yesterday's suffering steal tomorrow's strategy. Pain was never meant to be a home. It was meant to be a hallway. Walk through it. Don't stay in it. Because freedom isn't forgetting what happened. It's refusing to give it control over what happens next. And now, my friend, we move to the next cage, one far more deceptive. It doesn't come wearing the face of pain. It comes wearing the mask of wisdom. Now hear me today. This next cage is subtle, it is quiet, and it is respectable. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't look like an enemy. It looks like advice. It is the voice that says, be careful. It is the counsel that says, don't dream too big. It is the friend that says, be realistic. And because it sounds reasonable, we never recognize it as what it truly is. Fear disguised as wisdom. Some of you are not bound by failure. You are bound by false wisdom. You call it maturity, but it's really managed fear. You've learned how to sound wise while secretly staying small. Let me tell you something important. Not every safe choice is a smart one, and not every risk is foolish. The difference between wisdom and fear is motive. Wisdom plans for the future. Fear avoids it. The Spirit of God gives wisdom to build, not excuses to hide. But many have taken the language of prudence and turned it into the theology of paralysis. You tell yourself you're waiting on the right time, when the truth is you're afraid of the unknown. You tell yourself you're being strategic, when the truth is you're scared to step. Fear always disguises itself in logic. It says, don't start that business, the market is unstable. It says, don't pursue that vision, you don't have the qualifications. It says, don't forgive them, they'll hurt you again. And every time you listen, the walls of your cage grow thicker. The greatest enemy of faith is not failure, it is familiarity. Fear uses comfort to convince you that staying where you are is safer than becoming who you could be. But comfort zones are beautiful prisons. They make you feel secure while slowly stealing your potential. Let me share a story. Years ago, I mentored a young man who had a dream to transform his community through education. When he shared his vision with others, they told him, you're dreaming too big. Be practical. Start small. Don't try to do so much. Their words sounded wise, didn't they? Be practical. Start small. Don't overreach. But I discerned something. They weren't teaching him prudence. They were teaching him fear management. He could have listened and stayed comfortable, but he decided to build his mind instead of building excuses. He went forward anyway. And today, that young man oversees schools that have educated thousands of students who were once forgotten. If he had accepted their wisdom, he would have missed his calling. Sometimes what people call realistic is just their version of impossible. Write this down. Fear will always speak the language of reason, but its accent is limitation. Fear says it's not the right time. Faith says, if not now, when? Fear says, what if it doesn't work? Faith says, what if it does? Fear says, protect yourself. Faith says, invest yourself. The world calls this recklessness, but heaven calls it obedience. You see, wisdom and fear may look alike, but they have different destinations. Wisdom builds confidence. Fear builds caution. Wisdom multiplies. Fear maintains. Wisdom leads to freedom. Fear leads to familiarity. The truth is, wisdom never kills risk, it redeems it. Wisdom does not say, don't go. It says, go with understanding. Wisdom does not say, don't build. It says, count the cost, then build. But fear says, don't try at all. Fear will dress itself in spiritual language. It will say, I'm waiting for God. But my friend, sometimes God is waiting for you. Faith without movement is fantasy. You cannot steer a parked car, and God cannot direct a life that refuses to move. When you listen to fear disguised as wisdom, you start negotiating with your purpose. You start trimming your dreams to fit people's comfort zones. You begin to lower your expectations to protect your feelings. But the truth is, you will never discover new oceans if you insist on seeing the shore. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means deciding that purpose is greater than fear. Real wisdom never kills courage, it refines it. There's a statement I often tell leaders. Faith makes you see the invisible, believe the impossible, and attempt the incredible. But fear does the opposite. It makes you avoid the invisible, doubt the possible, and settle for the ordinary. So today, I challenge you to examine your wisdom. Is it grounded in faith or guarded by fear? Is it leading you forward or holding you hostage? Because anything that keeps you from your divine assignment, no matter how smart it sounds, is still bondage. Fear may keep you safe, but faith will make you significant. Fear may protect your comfort, but faith will produce your calling. Fear says, play not to lose. Faith says, live to win. If you will silence the voice of false wisdom, you will hear a louder voice inside you, the voice of vision, the whisper of destiny, the sound of divine potential waiting to speak. Because the cage of fear cannot hold a mind filled with faith. When you begin to act on what you believe instead of what you fear, the door of that cage swings open and destiny rushes in. Now, once fear loses its disguise, you must confront a far more deceptive enemy, the cage that wears the crown of success. Now, hear me carefully. This final cage is the most deceptive of them all because it doesn't look like bondage, it looks like blessing. It doesn't feel like a prison, it feels like promotion. It is called the success trap. You see, failure is easy to recognize. It hurts, it humbles, it reminds you that something is wrong. But success can seduce you into believing the journey is over. Success whispers, you've made it. Success says, protect what you've built. Success says, don't risk what's working. And before you realize it, your success has become your ceiling. Many people never fall because of failure, they fall because of success. Failure pushes you to grow, but success tempts you to stay. And when you start growing, your mind starts dying. Write this principle down in your heart. Yesterday's achievements can become tomorrow's imprisonment. When you start to protect your past victories more than you pursue your next assignment, you have already entered the cage. Success is supposed to be a doorway, not a destination. Let me tell you something about purpose. It never retires. Purpose is not a season, it is a lifetime. You don't arrive at purpose, you grow into it. Every level of success should lead you to a greater level of responsibility. But what happens to most people? They become caretakers of yesterday's blessings. They start maintaining what once required their faith. They stop exploring new mountains because they're busy polishing old trophies. They start defending their reputation instead of developing their revelation. My friend, don't let your last victory become your new prison. The day you stop learning, you start losing. The day you stop imagining, you start diminishing. The day you stop stretching, you start shrinking. Let me illustrate this with a story. There was a woman, successful attorney, respected, accomplished. She had wealth, influence, recognition. But inside, she was restless. She told me, Dr. Munroe, I feel like there's more, but I don't know what. As we talked, she confessed she loved writing stories for children, but never pursued it. She said, I can't. I'm a lawyer. This is what I'm known for. Her success had become her identity, and her identity had become her limitation. I looked at her and said, my dear, who told you that you can only be one thing? Success in law doesn't disqualify you from creativity. It qualifies you to do it with excellence. When she broke that cage of self-definition, she rediscovered her joy. Today, her children's books inspire thousands. She didn't abandon her success, she expanded it. That is what I want you to understand. Success should expand you, not enclose you. The reason some people never move into their next assignment is because they are afraid to lose the applause of the last one. But let me tell you something. Applause is addictive, and addiction to approval will keep you average. Never let the comfort of being celebrated keep you from being challenged. You see, the true test of greatness is not how high you climb, it's how willing you are to climb again after success. Anyone can rise once. Only the great rise repeatedly. When success becomes your idol, growth becomes your enemy. Success is a good servant, but a terrible master. It should inspire you to build further, not instruct you to stop. That's why some organizations die, not because they lack talent, but because they fell in love with yesterday's methods. That's why some leaders become irrelevant, not because they lost power, but because they stopped renewing their minds. Let me give you a principle. The mind that got you here cannot take you there. If you want to move into your next level, you must upgrade your mentality. You can't face new giants with old strategies. You can't enter new territory with old tools. You can't live tomorrow's calling with yesterday's confidence. You see, success has a way of making you cautious, but faith requires courage. If you are not willing to risk your comfort, you will never experience your capacity. Remember the story of Abraham? God said, leave your country and go to a land I will show you. That's success trap training right there. You cannot discover new blessings while clinging to familiar ones. My friend, there's a danger in comfort. Comfort is the silent killer of purpose. Comfort convinces you that preservation is more important than progression. Comfort makes you believe that peace means the absence of challenge, when true peace comes from alignment with purpose. I want you to think for a moment, what is the thing you've become too good at? What have you mastered so completely that you no longer need faith to do it? Because the absence of faith is the sign that you stop growing. You are not called to repeat what you've already proven. You are called to evolve into what you've not yet imagined. Do not become a prisoner of your own success. Don't let the world define you by your last victory. Every season of life has a new assignment waiting, but it requires a new mindset to reach it. The question is not, what did you achieve? The question is, what are you becoming? Because God is never finished with the mind that keeps expanding. So today, make this declaration with me. My success will serve my future, not sabotage it. I will celebrate progress, but I will not camp there. Every blessing will become a bridge to the next one. When you think like that, success becomes fuel, not furniture. And once this final cage is broken, you step into the highest level of mental freedom, where your mind no longer depends on external validation, but on internal conviction. So now, let us go there. Let us move from breaking cages to building conviction, because a free mind must now learn to stand firm. Now that we have exposed the cages that confine the human mind, let me show you how to walk out of them. Because truth without transformation is information wasted. You were not born to merely know freedom. You were born to live it. Listen carefully. Freedom is not the absence of walls. Freedom is the presence of understanding. There are people who have escaped their cages physically, but are still bound mentally because they never renewed their perception. True liberation is not geographical. It is psychological. You cannot change your life by changing location. You must change your mindset. You can move to a new city and still live in an old mentality. You can sit in a new office with the same old limitations. Because if your mind doesn't change, your environment will always repeat itself. So, how do we break free? There is a process, simple but not easy. I call it the 4 steps to mental liberation. Write them down and write them deeply, for they will become your roadmap from limitation to liberty. Step 1. Recognize awareness creates exit doors. The first key to freedom is recognition. You cannot defeat what you will not define. You cannot escape a cage you pretend doesn't exist. The greatest deception of bondage is normalcy, when people begin to call dysfunction the way it is. That's why awareness is deliverance in disguise. You must ask yourself, what thought patterns do I keep repeating? What beliefs do I defend even when they no longer serve me? What habits feel safe but keep me small? Until you become conscious of your mental limits, you will unconsciously protect them. That's why Jesus often asked before healing, do you want to be made whole? Not because he didn't know, but because he wanted the person to recognize their condition. Recognition opens the door to revelation. Step 2, reframe challenge the lie and replace it with truth. After you recognize the cage, you must reframe it. Every limitation begins as a lie that sounds true. To break free, you must confront that lie and replace it with principle. If you believe I'm not smart enough, reframe it. I can learn anything with discipline. If you believe no one like me succeeds, reframe it. My difference is my distinction. If you believe it's too late for me, reframe it. Purpose does not expire with age. You don't fight lies with feelings, you fight lies with truth. Because truth is not emotional, truth is eternal. This is why the scripture says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Freedom is not the product of escape, it is the product of enlightenment. When you expose a lie, you strip it of its authority. Step 3, build new patterns of thought. Recognition and reframing are powerful, but if you do not replace the old pattern, your mind will revert. Empty space in the mind is dangerous. Something will always fill it. That's why after you break a limiting belief, you must install a liberating one. How? Through repetition. Repetition builds conviction. Conviction builds transformation. Every morning, speak your new truth until it becomes instinct. Say it until your mind believes it, until your emotions submit to it, until your actions reflect it. Because words are the software of the soul. If you want to change the system, rewrite the code. Say with me, I am not a victim of my thoughts. I am the author of them. I do not live by emotion. I live by intention. My mind serves my purpose, not my past. When your declarations align with your destiny, your environment will eventually align with your declarations. Step 4. Rehearse discipline turns revelation into reality. Now the final step, rehearsal. You must practice your new mindset daily until it becomes your default. Freedom is not a one-time event. It is a daily decision. Every day, your old cage will call your name. Come back. It's safe here. And every day, you must answer, no, I've outgrown that. Discipline is the bridge between revelation and transformation. You don't need motivation. You need momentum. When you practice a truth long enough, it becomes permanent. Set time each day to reflect, not to worry, but to rewire. Ask yourself, what did I believe today that limited me? What did I practice today that liberated me? Because meditation without action is entertainment. Information without application is deception. You are not free when you understand truth. You are free when you embody it. A closing illustration, the locked door. Let me tell you a simple story. A young man once dreamed he was trapped in a dark room. He pushed the walls, shouted for help, searched for a window. Nothing worked. Finally, exhausted, he leaned against the door, and to his surprise, it opened. It had never been locked at all. That's how mental cages work. They keep you trapped, not because they are sealed, but because you never tried to walk through. The door of your freedom was unlocked the day you discovered truth. You are not waiting on permission. You are waiting on decision. The only key you need is awareness, belief, and consistent action. So I say to you, walk out. Walk out of fear. Walk out of doubt. Walk out of old definitions. Walk out of people's opinions. Walk out of inherited limits. Walk out of self-imposed prisons. And when you walk out, walk tall, because the cage cannot hold what has outgrown it. Once your mind has tasted freedom, it can never again be satisfied with captivity. But freedom, my friend, must now become foundation. Because a free mind without conviction is easily deceived. And so now, let us move into the next level of mental mastery, the mind of conviction, the kind of mind that cannot be shaken once it stands upon principle. My friend, the final mark of a liberated mind is conviction. Conviction is not opinion. Conviction is not preference. Conviction is principle that has taken root so deeply it becomes part of your identity. Consensus follows crowds. Conviction follows truth. Consensus changes with popularity. Conviction stands on principle. Consensus looks around. Conviction looks within. When you live by conviction, you no longer need validation. When you live by conviction, your confidence is internal, not external. When you live by conviction, you stop asking, do they agree? And start asking, is this right? That's why people of conviction always appear strange. They stand when others sit. They speak when others are silent. They move when others wait for permission. Because conviction is louder than opinion, deeper than fear, and stronger than circumstance. You cannot build a great life on agreement. You can only build it on conviction. The winds of culture will blow, public opinion will rise and fall, friends will come and go, but conviction anchors you when everything else shifts. Conviction is the internal government of a free mind. A man or woman without conviction will always become a slave to consensus. They will always bend to pressure, compromise in crisis, and conform to comfort. You see, conviction is not stubbornness. Stubbornness refuses to change despite evidence. Conviction remains steadfast because of evidence. It stands not out of pride, but out of principle. Let me give you a story. I once met a young woman who started a small school under a tree in a village. She had no building, no staff, no financial support, only conviction. When people mocked her, she said, "If I stop, who will teach the children?" Years later, that small school became one of the largest educational networks in her nation. Her conviction attracted resources. Her conviction inspired others. Her conviction overcame obstacles that talent alone could not. Conviction will make you unstoppable where resources fail. People will follow a person with conviction long before they follow a person with credentials. Because conviction has weight. You can feel it when someone speaks from principle, not preference. Conviction is born from clarity. You cannot be sure of what you have not defined. Clarity produces confidence. Confidence produces conviction. So I ask you, what do you believe about yourself? What values will you never compromise? What truth are you willing to suffer for? When you can answer those questions, your life becomes focused. You stop chasing opportunities and start attracting alignment. Because conviction magnetizes destiny. It pulls the right people and pushes away the wrong ones. Many people fail not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack certainty. They don't know what they stand for, so they fall for whatever works. The second element of conviction is personalization. It's not enough to know what's true. You must make it true for you. You can quote wisdom you don't live. You can preach truth you don't practice. You can admire principles you've never applied. Conviction begins when truth moves from your head to your heart. I knew a man who could teach ethics better than anyone, yet he fell in the simplest moral test. Why? Because integrity was his opinion, not his conviction. You must own what you know. Only personalized truth has power. The third element of conviction is cost. Every genuine conviction will cost you something. It might cost you popularity when you stand against the crowd. It might cost you comfort when you choose purpose over pleasure. It might cost you relationships when others don't share your vision. But remember this, conviction without cost is just convenience. If your truth has never been tested, it has never been trusted. Only what you're willing to suffer for reveals what you truly believe. I once worked with a leader who turned down millions of dollars because the deal compromised his values. People asked him, "How could you walk away from that?" He smiled and said, "Because I've invested too much in who I am to sell it so cheaply." That, my friend, is conviction. When you live by conviction, peace replaces fear. You no longer worry about outcomes because principle decides for you. Conviction simplifies life. You no longer need to deliberate over every decision. You just ask, does it align with what I believe? A mind with conviction doesn't seek permission to stand firm. It doesn't need constant applause to maintain its purpose. It doesn't retreat when criticized, and it doesn't crumble when alone. This is the kind of mind that transforms nations. This is the kind of mind that scares mediocrity. This is the kind of mind that heaven can trust with influence. So decide today, I will live by conviction, not by consensus. I will be guided by principles, not by popularity. I will measure success not by applause, but by alignment with purpose. Because in the end, it is conviction, not comfort, that crowns a life with meaning. And now, having built a mind of conviction, let us take the final step to understand what it means to reconstruct the liberated mind into one that governs itself by principle and creates legacies that endure. Now that you've broken free from the cages of limitation, fear, and conformity, what comes next? Freedom, my friend, is not the end, it's the beginning. Because once the walls fall, you must now learn how to build. You see, freedom without structure is chaos. And a liberated mind without leadership becomes a loose cannon full of power but lacking direction. That is why I say to you today, the mind that is free must now become the mind that leads. 1. Freedom requires framework. When God delivered Israel from Egypt, they left the cage of slavery, but they didn't yet have the culture of freedom. They were free bodies with slave minds. They left the chains behind, but carried the mentality with them. So God didn't just give them land, He gave them laws. Why? Because freedom must be governed by principle. A free mind must be trained to think in order, discipline, and stewardship. Write this principle down. Freedom without principle becomes self-destruction. That is why many people lose what they gain, because they never built a framework to sustain it. You can break out of a prison, but if you don't build purpose afterward, you'll eventually return to captivity. 2, build your mind on principles, not opinions. Leadership begins when principle replaces preference. Opinions change with time, but principles are timeless. Principles are the foundation stones of stability. They do not bend when the winds of emotion blow. When your thinking is built on principle, you become unshakable. When your values are built on principle, compromise becomes impossible. When your decisions are built on principle, consistency becomes natural. Opinions will keep you popular. Principles will keep you powerful. Choose the latter. Let the word principle define you. Live by it. Die by it if necessary. Because leaders don't follow crowds. They follow convictions built on truth. Is 3. Discipline. The architecture of a strong mind. Every great building stands because it was disciplined to its design. Likewise, every great mind stands because it is disciplined to its principles. Discipline is not punishment, it is alignment. It is the consistent behavior that protects your progress. You don't become strong by thinking occasionally, you become strong by thinking consistently. The most dangerous mind is not the one that knows the most, it's the one that stays focused the longest. Remember this, freedom without discipline is permission to fail. So guard your thoughts daily. Schedule your growth. Feed your mind intentionally. If your mind is a factory, discipline is the production schedule. Without it, even brilliant ideas rust into waste. 4, reflection, turning knowledge into wisdom. A leader's mind is not just filled, it is filtered. Reflection is what separates noise from knowledge. We live in a world drowning in information but starving for wisdom. Wisdom is born when you pause long enough to connect what you've learned with what you live. Take time every day to be alone with your thoughts. Don't fear silence. Silence is the sanctuary of wisdom. In silence, your mind matures, your motives purify, and your direction clarifies. Dr. Munroe would often say, I don't think fast, I think deep. Depth doesn't come from speed, it comes from stillness. 5, responsibility, the mark of mental maturity. The true evidence of a reconstructed mind is responsibility. A free mind always asks, what can I do? An unhealed mind always asks, who can I blame? Responsibility is the acceptance that your life is the product of your decisions, not your conditions. It means you no longer hand your power to politicians, parents, or past experiences. Every time you say it's someone else's fault, you surrender authority. But every time you say, I will take responsibility, you reclaim dominion. Leadership begins with personal responsibility. Before you can lead others, you must manage yourself. If you cannot govern your own thoughts, how can you guide a nation? 6, vision, the compass of a reconstructed mind. A leader's mind is guided by vision. Vision gives direction to freedom. It tells your energy where to go. Without vision, freedom becomes wandering. With vision, freedom becomes progress. A vision is not a fantasy. It is a picture of your potential guided by principle. It is the mental blueprint of your divine assignment. And hear this, your future is hidden in your daily focus. Leaders don't chase everything, they pursue purpose. They say no more often than they say yes. They live by intentionality, not impulse. So write your vision, guard your vision, feed your vision. Because what you continually see in your mind, you will eventually stand in with your life. 7, legacy, turning mental freedom into generational impact. Finally, every reconstructed mind must think generationally. You are not just living for yourself, you are building a pattern for those who come after you. The greatest proof that your mind is renewed is when your thinking outlives you. When your principles become your family's culture. When your convictions become your community's values. When your wisdom becomes your world's inheritance. Legacy is not leaving people money, it's leaving them mentality. Because money without mentality will return them to poverty. But principle will produce progress that no economy can erase. Teach your children not only what to think, but how to think. Give them not your success, but your systems. Give them not your trophies, but your truth. When you build minds, you build nations. When you build principles, you build civilizations. When you build legacies of thought, you build eternity into time. 8, the final call. From freedom to leadership. So today, I charge you, don't just be a product of freedom, be a producer of it. Let your thinking become a model for others to follow. Live as evidence that a renewed mind can rebuild a broken world. Every great change in history began when one person decided to think differently. Let that person be you. From this day forward, stop living by reaction and start living by revelation. Stop living by emotions and start living by principles. Stop living by permission and start living by conviction. You have the power to reconstruct your mind into the mind of a leader. A mind that governs itself by truth. A mind that inspires others by example. A mind that refuses to be conformed, but chooses to be transformed. So I declare over you today, your mind is free. Your thoughts are ordered. Your vision is clear. Your purpose is unstoppable. Now, go build the life, the legacy, and the leadership your renewed mind was designed for. Because the cage is gone, the door is open, and destiny is waiting.